I'm Kellie Murphy-Ringate, Fire Inspector and Public Educator for the Excelsior Fire District, and welcome to First Responder TV, your local public safety source, featuring training exercises, safety tips, and much more. Here's what's coming up on First Responder TV. We'll tour the Hennepin County Medical Center's state-of-the-art hyperbaric chamber. The Excelsior Fire District shares our rich history as we celebrate our 125th year on making a difference. Scam Alert. We'll give you an update on scams that have been targeting citizens in the lake area. Loretto and Maple Plain volunteer firefighters take part in an auto extrication training exercise on Safety Source. Joining me now, we have Dr. Christopher Logue of the Hyperbaric Chamber at the Hennepin County Medical Center in Minneapolis. And can you tell us a little bit about this wall? I believe it's a display of the history of the chamber.
Absolutely, I can, yeah. So Hennepin County Medical Center had one of the first hyperbaric chambers in the country, built in 1963, 1964. Back then, you used hyperbaric oxygen primarily to treat diving-related scuba diving accidents like the bends or decompression sickness, or carbon monoxide poisoning too. But at that time, it was before the days of cardiopulmonary bypass. So the center of the hyperbaric chamber was actually an operating room. So the idea was you could operate on someone in a high oxygen content environment and you could prolong the time that that patient would not have oxygenation. Once we developed cardiopulmonary bypass, that really didn't become necessary anymore, and then the hyperbaric chamber was used for what we typically use it for today, treating non-healing wounds and emergencies like carbon monoxide poisoning and that type of stuff. So these are artifacts from the old chamber. Remember, we were, again, the only emergency facility at that time too, and the chamber was state-of-the-art at the time in 1964, but in the late 2000s, the chamber was reaching the end of its lifespan, and the hospital and the local government needed to figure out what to do, and they felt it was definitely worthwhile to replace the hyperbaric chamber since we provide this service. We're the only place that provides the service in the state.
Now, the chamber itself has a pretty impressive lineage. It was built, where was it built?
Yeah, so the new chamber was put in 2012. It was built by a company called Fink, and it was built in Australia and then shipped from Australia to here. And then it's one of the few chambers that is rectangularly shaped. If people have seen other chambers, they look more like submarines or torpedoes tubes if they talk about the smaller chambers, but our chamber is rectangular, and the company called Fink makes it look more like a room rather than going in a submarine. So.
And I think when we call it a chamber, I don't think people understand that we are in a building at HCMC.
Correct, yep. So the chamber is located here inside the purple building at Hennepin County Medical Center. The chamber, think of it more of like pressurized rooms, so we can close those doors and pressurize the room, and then we can administer the high dose oxygen to the patients.
Chris, can you tell us where we are right now?
So with the chamber at Hennepin County Medical Center, we have 3 separate chambers. This is our what we call transfer lock 3, and this is where we would treat any emergency patients that would come in if they were to come in during the day or even after hours at night. So transfer lock 3 or chamber 3 is set up for full critical care capability, so we can treat patients who are sick to the point where they require mechanical ventilation. We're set up to do that, and we can monitor them just like we would in an intensive care unit.
Can you explain what mechanical ventilation is?
Yeah, so if a patient cannot breathe on their own, the tube is placed down into their trachea, and then a machine will actually inflate and deflate their lungs for them to help them breathe. So that would be a intubated patient or someone who's mechanically ventilated. So we have a special ventilator that's been approved for use in hyperbaric environments.
How does the hyperbaric chamber work? Like, what does it do to help people with the conditions that
so
they have?
I frequently tell people that although it looks like a spaceship, it's not rocket science. So all we're really doing is we're giving patients high dose oxygen. So I tell patients and other physicians who refer patients to me is, in this setting, I want you to think of oxygen more like it's a drug than the gas that we breathe every day. And and the only way that anybody can get very high dose oxygen is to breathe oxygen in while they're at increased pressure. So with the hyperbaric chamber, we would be able to close the door, right? So, and once we shut the door, we can then apply pressure, pressurize the room to an elevated pressure, and then administer the 100% oxygen to the patient. And then by doing that, we can get your blood oxygen content 10 times higher than we could ever get it if you were just to put oxygen on somebody who was in an ambulance on a rig.
So what are some common treatments that you do at the hyperbaric chamber?
So we treat patients every day. We have patients who come in on a daily basis, and the most common indication for that are patients with non-healing wounds, usually on their lower extremities, like diabetics with lower extremity ulcers that are at very high risk for amputation. And if we add hyperbaric oxygen to their standard wound care regimen, we can help prevent them from needing an amputation, and we can get their wounds to heal. So those are our daily, everyday patients we treat. Remember, though, that we're the only emergency hyperbaric chamber in the upper Midwest other than Milwaukee. So we get emergency referrals in, and the most common emergency we'll get is carbon monoxide poison patients who are referred to us.
I believe most people are aware that they can get carbon monoxide in their homes, but are there some other places that people should be aware, or other times people should be aware of carbon monoxide?
Everyone should have a carbon monoxide detector in your home. People ask where it should be in your home. There should be one near your sleeping quarters or in your bedroom that would wake you up in the middle of the night if you were to get carbon monoxide poisoning. Other than that, I recommend that you put one on each level of the house and one near your furnace in the basement, so it would go off first if there was a problem with your furnace or leakage from that. But that being said, your home is not the only place you can get carbon monoxide poisoning. And I actually was recruited here from Philadelphia, and I wasn't aware how common boating accidents can cause carbon monoxide poisoning now that I'm in the land of the 10,000 lakes. And we will frequently get carbon monoxide poisoned patients in the summer who are either playing around the back of an idling boat while it's just sitting, or if there's a problem with the exhaust, it can get up into the cabin of your boat. So I recommend that if you have a boat and you're out there, you get a marine grade carbon monoxide detector for your boat that will alert you if your carbon monoxide level gets high. And be careful with kids swimming around the back of the boat if the boat is idling. Automobiles can cause it. If we get a heavy snowfall and the snowfall gets above the level of the exhaust of the car and you leave the car running, you can get carbon monoxide poisoning that way. And then another unfortunately common carbon monoxide poisoning cases we get are in the wintertime when people are out in their ice fishing houses and they're heating it with any propane powered or carbonaceous fossil fuel powered heater, and it's not ventilated properly. You can get carbon monoxide poisoning that way. So.
You had mentioned to me earlier about when the power goes out. That's another time that can be dangerous.
Yeah, nothing makes a hyperbaric doc more nervous than a big storm that's coming that's going to perhaps knock out power. I was in Philadelphia when Hurricane Sandy came through, and there was 8.1 million power outages, including my house. But we had to run the hyperbaric chamber 24 hours a day for 4 days. We had 18 cases of critically ill carbon monoxide poison patients come in at that time. So when power outages occur, we frequently see carbon monoxide poisoning because either people have generators but they don't use them properly. You need to leave them far enough away from your house and properly ventilated. Do not put it in your garage. Even if your garage door is open, it's still not enough to do that. And then also people trying to figure out how to heat their houses. Don't heat your house with your gas-powered stove with the oven door open, because that's a great way to get carbon monoxide poisoning as well. And then make sure you have carbon monoxide detectors. The tricky part with a power outage is that usually the detectors will plug into the wall, but when you lose power, you want to make sure the backup batteries are in your carbon monoxide detector. So check those 9-volt batteries that are in your carbon monoxide detectors in your house in the setting of a power outage.
Can you tell me about the research that's done here?
Sure, yeah. So we, because of our capabilities, we're able to treat a number of different conditions, some of the even newer conditions that are approved for use with hyperbaric oxygen therapy. One of the exciting things we're treating now is something called central retinal artery occlusion, which is essentially a stroke to the eye. So the central retinal artery, which is the blood vessel that delivers your perfusion, your oxygen to your retina, can get blocked. So think of it as a stroke, but instead of to another part of your brain, it's to your eye. Your symptoms will be sudden, painless loss of vision in your eye. So you won't have like the droop, the facial droop like you would typically see with a stroke, but it indeed is a stroke. And what we found is that, and all the local ophthalmologists know about this, and some of the local emergency departments will ship the patients in for us to treat. If we treat those patients with very high dose oxygen, we can send enough oxygen through a separate blood vessel that's not blocked, that goes to the front of the eye, and then that oxygen will diffuse back to the retina. So the idea is that we can keep the retina alive long enough until that blood vessel will reopen itself. So if the blood vessel reopens a day later and the retina is dead, there's nothing you can do. But if we can keep the retinal cells alive, so we're one of the only places in the country that has the capability of treating those patients, and we're having really good response rates, and it's some exciting new research that we're working on together with the ophthalmologists, the neurologists who treat the strokes, and then we work together with them to help treat those patients.
Is there any research, notable research you want to tell us about from the past?
Yeah, so a lot of research relating to carbon monoxide poisoning has been done here in the past. One of the things that was discovered here at Hennepin County Medical Center is we treat so many carbon monoxide poison patients, and one of the things we were not aware of is how frequently your heart gets damaged from carbon monoxide poisoning. So some of the literature that was published out of Hennepin around 2005 showed that that was a pretty high, there was a pretty high incidence of cardiac damage. So now all patients who get carbon monoxide poisoning, including kids can get cardiac damage as well. They should be getting an EKG, and we check their serial troponins because they can get cardiac damage from carbon monoxide poisoning, and it changes sort of how we manage them, and we worry more about those patients that have heart damage, and that was all done here at this facility too.
Chris, can you tell us where we are right now and what's happening?
Yeah, so we're at the Chamber Operations Console. This is sort of the nerve center of the hyperbaric unit. So Ryan here is operating. We have actually multiple chambers sort of traveling at this time, but so the system is all computerized, so the computer can run the program and pressurize the chambers, which we can override at any point in time if we need to. The patients are never in the chamber by themselves. They'll always be in there with either one of our specially trained technicians or nurses, and then there's always a specially trained technician operating the chamber on the outside. They're in constant communication via the wireless headsets, and then we have closed circuit TV so we can monitor everything as well and make sure all the patients are safe. Patients will typically, for our elective treatments, the treatments we do on Mondays through Fridays, will go in groups. So we'll run a group of patients at the same time. Up to 7 to 8 patients at a time we can treat, and most of those patients, again, are being treated for chronic conditions like non-healing wounds and that kind of thing, so we can get those wounds to heal up. They'll be coming every day for as many as 20 treatments at a time. Remember, what's interesting about this too is the patients are breathing oxygen, but our people who ride along, whether it be the technician or the nurse, they're just breathing the air in the chamber. So in a sense, they're diving, and they can get decompression sickness. So my responsibility as the supervising physician is not only to take care of the patients, but to make sure that all of the attendants and other personnel are safe. So we track everybody who goes in and out of the chamber, how long they've been in the chamber for, and we make sure that we don't run the risk of giving them the bends.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? I know you mentioned earlier about a law that's going into effect.
Yeah, so we talked about how we are the only place in the area that treats carbon monoxide poisoning. There was an unfortunate fatality of a little girl on a boat in Lake Minnetonka about 1.5 years ago, which prompted the state legislature to consider, and I think it's going to be passed, a law. It's Sophia's Law, which will require certain boats of a certain size and that have a cabin in them to have marine-grade carbon monoxide detectors in them, so that kind of tragedy doesn't occur again. So it's going to increase awareness of boating safety when it comes to carbon monoxide poisoning, which I think is important.
And I will add, I don't think you should wait for the law to go into
Correct,
effect.
yes, right.
Go out and purchase a marine-grade carbon monoxide
detector for your boat. Yep, it's a smart thing to do so none of your family members or friends get hurt while you're out on the
be
water.
proactive.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the staff. Literally, thank you for opening your doors to a great tour of the chamber.
No problem. It's our pleasure.
First Responder TV will be back after this short break. Welcome back to First Responder TV. We'd like to spotlight the Excelsior Fire District, whose members have gone above and beyond for 125 years on making a difference.
Before I even joined, we had a number of fires on Main Street, and one of the first ones that I remember was the fire in the Red Owl store. I think I was in first grade then. I could go home for lunch because we lived so close to the school. And so I went down there at noon because my dad was there fighting the fire.
envision what Excelsior was like when the hook and ladder company was first formed. When a building burned down, only the chimney was left. They took that hook and ladder and they threw the ladder up, hooked the hook to the chimney and pulled it down. Around 1891 is when we come to when the fire department was actually organized.
This organization couldn't run without the people, which is a couple of full-time people, but the majority being the paid-on-call volunteer. They're coming because they're committed. And that's part of that family and that connection, I think, that we have in this paid-on-call fire department. But it's really the predecessors in our 125-year history that helped lay that foundation.
Well, I joined the fire department in January of 1950. My grandfather started in 1905. My dad joined in 1918. My son, 1974 or something like that he joined. When I joined, we were in the old village hall in Excelsior. There was one door that the trucks went in and out of, and it was low overhead. You had to be sure and duck your head or you're going to lose it as you went out the door. You would see fellows that were climbing on the tailboard as the truck went out this door. Fellows would be holding them on while they were putting on their rubber goods. Hopefully you'd get dressed by the time you got to the fire, but everybody was kind of hanging on for dear life back there. Mid-1950s, I guess, that we moved into what was the new fire station then in Excelsior. And then they started getting some better equipment.
When the west side of Main Street in Excelsior, Water Street burned down, they took that as an opportunity to try and get more equipment, better equipment. And one of the other things that the fire department was intertwined with was an ordinance that goes back to the late 1800s, where buildings that burned down or were destroyed had to be built from brick. And that's why we see the brick buildings.
Probably the two biggest fires were the Blue Line Cafe, which was just a huge old wooden structure that, there was no chance of saving it once it got started. And the other one was the dance hall, which a lot of people are familiar with. No putting it out, you just kept it from spreading.
Fundraisers were a big part of our fire department's history. Had fundraising dances regularly. They had watermelon feeds and wrestling matches and basketball games.
The smelt fry was started in the 1950s, and there was a number of fellows that would get together and they would hear that the smelt were running up on the North Shore, and they'd come back with this big tub full of smelt and nothing to do but clean smelt.
The Excelsior Volunteer Fire Department, as it once was called, originally was owned by the firefighters, and eventually the city of Excelsior purchased the fire department. It contracted to the other cities until it came down to it was 4 other cities in the city of Excelsior. They decided, hey, what about if we could get all 5 cities to have ownership of the fire department? There's where the Excelsior Fire District came from.
We have 2 beautiful fire stations, one located in the city of Deep Haven and one in Shorewood, that serve our fire district operations amongst the 5 cities. We have state-of-the-art apparatus, we have state-of-the-art equipment. It's not just fire service anymore, it's fire, it's emergency medical services.
The reason I've done it for so long is it's been needed. I grew up with it from my grandfather and my father. It just kind of gets in your blood. It's an honor, of course. I remember the day that it was unveiled. They called me out there and took the sign off, and it was a big party.
125 years, one of the oldest fire departments in the state. This year we're able to celebrate that. September 10th is a date that we hope the community gets a chance to be able to come out and celebrate with us. We're going to do tours at both of our fire stations, and we're going to do an apparatus parade in downtown Excelsior from 1:30 till 3. We're going to host a water fight event. During that same time, we're going to offer some watermelon. Well, back in our history, one of the things that we did to celebrate community was connect, and we served watermelon. September 12th at the Excelsior Brewery, starting at 7 p.m., we'll be hosting an event tapping history. I'm certainly very humbled, very honored to be able to be the fire chief of this organization. The predecessors that have brought it to where we are today, they've helped really put the foundation there. We have one of the best organizations in the state of Minnesota, and our goal is to be able to continue to do that, and that means excellence, and that means to continue to try to do the best we can to provide service.
It's time for Scam Alert. This segment alerts the public on scams that have been reported to local police departments.
The Minnesota Department of Revenue is warning customers about a scammer knocking on doors and posing as an agent from the department. The scammer is demanding that the victim make immediate payment of back taxes owed. However, in reality, the department never contacts customers demanding immediate payment without first mailing a letter, and the department does not threaten to send the police to a customer's home. Also, the department does not require that you provide payment information over the phone. Use caution and only provide personal information, including credit card information, when you are absolutely sure the situation is legitimate. If you are concerned about a potentially fraudulent visit, call or email from someone who represents themselves as being from the Minnesota Department of Revenue. Please call 651-296-3003 or 1-800-657-3909. An authorized Minnesota Department of Revenue staff member will be able to determine if the contact you received was legitimate. Someone claiming to be a representative from Xcel Energy is calling people and telling them that they need to pay an outstanding bill by credit card or face immediate service disconnection. The scammer is having victims provide their credit card information over the telephone or send money via Express Money Pack. The South Lake Minnetonka Police Department has confirmed with Xcel Energy that this is a scam. Xcel Energy is not calling their customers and forcing them to pay delinquent bills or face service disconnection. The South Lake Minnetonka Police Department stresses the importance of verifying with who you are speaking before providing any financial information by telephone. Failing to verify this information could result in you becoming a victim. The scam of someone calling and claiming to be from Xcel Energy is just another attempt by defrauders to obtain your personal information. If you receive such a call, please report it to the South Lake Minnetonka Police Department's Dispatch Center at 763-525-6210. The Wayzata Police Department is warning the public about a caller pretending to be a representative from the police department requesting credit card information for a donation for a safety program. Police suggest that if people get a call from someone claiming to be raising money for a law enforcement agency, they should check with that department before giving any information out. People should report such scams to their local law enforcement department.
This month on Safety Source, Loretto and Maple Plain volunteer firefighters take part in an auto extrication training exercise to keep you safe during vehicle emergencies.
Tonight we're doing auto extrication. There is a combination, you guys figured out, deceased victims in there and alive people. One in the front is alive, one in the back is alive, and then we've got one victim alive in this car here. Use that just as your scenario as you're starting to take it apart so you have a little bit of a goal of what you're doing. Then when you get the combination between us and Loretto, there'll be a live driver in here and two in there that are alive yet. So, and remember, it's a team event. We all work together on this. Make sure that everybody knows what's happening so nobody gets hurt. Let's go get our gear. What they're doing right now is gaining what's called a purchase point or an access point to get to the latch that holds the door in. What he's doing is working the jaws in to try to get a good pry point on the vehicle to pop the door open so we can gain access. We do our best to try to get access to the patient to where we can stabilize them and assess what their injuries are, and then work on getting the vehicle away from the victim to get them safely out of the vehicle and into the ambulance. By going this way here, pulls the door away from the victim and also gives them a little better access point to the latch. When they see an accident, they see the firefighters working very diligently. Sometimes people get a little upset that we don't get the victims out of the car faster. They have to understand we have to take the car away from them. We have to be very careful, not only of the sharp metal and the structure of the car. We have to be very careful of electrical problems that we may have in there. Starting a fire, airbags can cause us issues, so we have to be very careful and kind of not really a slow, but a very methodical access to the patients in the car. We like to bend the door out of the way. Some departments like to cut it and get it completely off the vehicle. We like to leave the door for access. The can opener, that's what we use to cut the windshield. If we have a victim in there, we cover them with a blanket to prevent the shards of glass getting on them. But typically, when we arrive at the scene, the windshields are usually out of the vehicle, pushed out by the airbags. The three main things, one is safety, know what each other's doing, make sure you have your proper turnout gear on. Two is know what the tool can do. And then number three is make sure that when you're using your equipment, is you're taking the metal away from the patient and make sure that you're not causing any further injury. We do a lot of work with other fire departments with crashes because as you can see, one car can take a lot of time. Loretto is here with us tonight. They're backing us up in case we get a call while we have our equipment out. And then they will be doing the last scenario with us as a team. This vehicle was rear-ended by an RV and run over. The driver was pushed in the back and is trapped underneath the stuff in the back. We got two people in the front, one person in the back. All the doors are jammed on this one with varying degrees of injuries, two of them unconscious. What we get to do on this vehicle here is they're just going to maybe open the doors and pry them out of the way, where Loretto's got to get inside and actually lift the steel up to get it off the victim that's in there. They are using inside there, they're using a hydraulic ram that just pushes straight up. They're getting it on, as you can see, they're using the cross members for strength on the vehicle to get it to come up. They're working from both ends. The back, they're using the jaws also. Say, Brian, get that bottom jaw all the way out. See when we do it? See how the door starts pulling away from the victim when you do it that way? There you go. Sometimes hard for the old chief just to stand back. There we go. We'd simulate that this would be the end of this one. As you can see, not everything goes perfectly. This car was hardly damaged, but yet it still comes apart very difficult.
Thanks for watching First Responder TV, your local public safety source. If you have an idea for a segment, an upcoming public safety or fire prevention event, please let us know. This is Kellie Murphy-Ringate giving you information you can use, share, and to live by. See you next time.